most of everyone who's listening to this who isn't achieving what they want is fucked with their time. They think that they're spending all their time working, but your output, like you don't even know how to work. I'm being really real with you. Like you think you know how to work, you don't know how to work. Like the amount of output, like, and I'll measure this by like, what is your output? It's probably not as high as you think. And so rather than trying to learn all these productivity hacks, the ultimate productivity hack is no. N-O, is you stop doing shit. And then when you create space, then you can fill it with the thing that matters. But trying to add on more to your schedule of all the things that you're not willing to sacrifice is the very reason that you're not doing what you need to do.
A lot of people would look at that life of, I'm going to sacrifice evenings and I'm not going to watch football anymore, and say, well, what's the point? If you make yourself miserable en route to achieving the goal,
Totally.
If most of your life is journey, not destination, and it makes you miserable en route to it, why do that?
So that was the thing I was mentioning earlier, where it's like, let's take the absolute extreme of it's going to suck and it's going to last forever. How can I be okay in that circumstance? And I do have the fundamental belief that circumstance has nothing to do with what your subjective well-being is. And so if monks can be super chill in wherever monks do monk things and have nothing and have higher subjective well-being ratings than anyone else here in the Western world, it clearly isn't external. And so then if I'm going to be just as miserable being mediocre as I am doing this shit that's going to amount to something, then I might as well do the shit that's going to amount to something and be miserable there and at least have something to show for it.
There's this story I learned about Victor Hugo, famous writer from history. Do you know this about what he did with his servant?
Mm-mm.
So Victor Hugo needed to make himself right. So he paid his servant each night during the middle of the night to come into his bedroom and remove the bedclothes from him, turn the heating off, and then lock his bedroom door from the outside. And he wasn't allowed to leave until Victor slid 6 pages of handwritten work underneath. So, you know, you look at Opal, which is this app for iPhone, which stops you from using apps, or Frozen Turkey, Cold Turkey, which is the same thing for desktop. And that's just the digital equivalent of Victor Hugo being locked in his bedroom with no bedding and just a quill and a few pieces of paper, and then having to slide it underneath the door.
And I want to push back on something that you said right before Victor Hugo, which is, you know, somebody might ask, like, why would you do all this stuff if you're not happy? That assumes that my goal in life is to be happy.
What is your goal in life?
To do epic shit. Genuinely. To be useful. And so...
why place do epic shit over be happy?
Because when I look back on my life in retrospect, the things that bring me the most joy in the moment are the things that I was willing to sacrifice for an extended period of time. And those pay memory dividends far greater than the momentary cost that I had in the moment. And so I think it's a long-term, short-term thing. But a frame that continued to paralyze me for a long period of time was an obsession with happiness. Like, it was truly an obsession. It was an obsession of mine in college. I almost got into positive psychology because I thought that was really interesting. And that's my passion, right? I consumed all that stuff and I drove myself mad with it. And I actually was more sad and depressed than anything, which is probably why I was trying to find all this positive, hippy dippy stuff. And I just cracked one day and I was like, fuck happiness. Because it felt so out of reach that I was like, just fuck it. I'm not even going to shoot for it. I'm just going to do stuff. And that's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to do stuff. And what happened was, like, a few years later, a few years later, I looked up and I was like, I'm not miserable. And so I actually identified for a very long period of time as, I'm not a happy person, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. I accept that. And there was this huge conflict for such a long period of time where I was like, you're supposed to be happy. Why aren't you happier? Like, there's something wrong. There's something wrong with you. Something needs to change. Rather than saying, like, maybe the level of happy that you are is fine. Who am I? Like, what happy am I comparing myself to? And also, if wherever your current state is, if you just say, like, happier, which is really when people are like, I want to be happy, they're just saying, I want to be happier. than I am, which means that you create this distance between where you are and where you want to be, which is the recipe for being unhappy, is saying that I want to be happier. So it doesn't matter how happy you are, you want to be happier. And so by relinquishing the desire to be happy, I ended up enjoying a lot more of the stuff that I was doing because I didn't make it a requisite for my activities. So then it became a pleasant surprise. I was like, oh, this doesn't suck. Huh, how nice.
Two famous psychologists, Daniel Gilbert and Daniel Kahneman, have quite divergent views on happiness. Okay. It's quite interesting. So Daniel Gilbert talks about how if you spent every minute of the rest of your life on a floaty lie low in a pool drinking cocktails, in retrospect, you might not have found much meaning, but each individual moment of experience would have been enjoyable. And he believes that constitutes to him a life that is well lived.
I disagree with this guy entirely.
Daniel Kahneman, and this is my position too, which is a well-lived life is one which in retrospect you are glad that you lived, right? So one is leaning toward hedonic pleasure and the other is leaning toward meaning. So one you could say is happiness and the other is meaning. It's my belief that your disposition largely influences where on that spectrum from lie low to do hard things you need to sit. And you will have friends, and I did for a very long time in the nightlife industry, have friends that just seem to be so fucking happy not doing stuff. Like just they would float through life and they wouldn't ask themselves, am I actualizing my fucking virtue? Is this the highest integrity that I can do with these things and all the rest of it? And I was envious of those people. You ever seen a dog? You see a dog on the floor and it's just lying there and you think, oh my God, if only I could be that dog. Like it just wants to go for a walk and have food and like go pee-pee. That's it. That's all it wants to do. And you think, fuck, it would be great to be that dog. But like, guess what? If your constitution doesn't allow you to be that dog, the only way out is through. And this was something... The first time that I went to go and see Peterson, someone asked him a question and they said, the depth of my consciousness causes me to suffer. Is it a blessing or a curse to feel everything so deeply? And he thought for a little bit and he said, take more of the thing that poisons you until you turn it into a tonic that girdles the world around you. The only way out is through. And it's kind of like, as soon as you realize that there are things that you do that give you satisfaction and there are things that other people do that give them happiness, and you've tried that route, the only way is to continue doing the thing that you know that works. And I think that you were an example of someone who is optimizing heavily for meaning rather than for hedonism. And that's not to say that there are people, and this is, I said this on the last episode, the fundamental thing that people don't understand, as far as I can tell, about your worldview is that the thing that you do for work and the thing that you do for fun are the same thing. They can't imagine that because that's not the way that it is for them. And it's not maybe the way it is for most people. But if you're the sort of person that finds meaning more enjoyable than happiness, you need to optimize for the thing that you enjoy the most.
And I'll toss in, and meaning lasts longer. And so I'll be super upfront. If those friends of yours in the nightlife, there's nothing wrong with that in my way, like as I see the world. Like if that's you and you're like, I fucking love everything I do, then like you won. Like just keep doing that. You know what I mean? But I think a lot of the message that Chris and I are saying here is that if you've tried that path and it hasn't worked for you, then you have this dark door that's in the corner that you've been trying all the other ones that have nice gold edges and really shiny things, but there's that door that you keep looking at, and it's the other side of you that's clearing his throat in the other room, and it's like, you just have to bust through the door. And I think that giving yourself permission to be unhappy, or at least for me, giving myself permission to be unhappy for an extended period of time in order to get what I wanted, gave me so much relief from, honestly, I don't like using the word nowadays because it has so many associations, but just from like the depression or the funk that I was in for a few years.
Right?
Yeah, I just didn't like my life. And I'd achieved by most measures, because I don't have the, school failed me. I was a whatever. Like I wasn't that. I finished in 3 years and I did really well in school and I had a really good job. but it was empty for me. And so my goal is things we talked about earlier, but my personal goal is to squeeze every ounce of potential out of whatever I have. And I think that if you feel like you have potential left over, then it will eat you alive until you do something about it.